two of us.
We had a problem in the camera before. I really hope it's working. Good morning and a good Chodesh. We are learning today's 3 Prakim Rambam with the help of Hashem, and they are Hilchos Gagos, Prakim Yud Beis, Yud Gimel, and Yud Dalid. All of the 3 chapters today are really a synopsis, a halachic conclusion of Masechtas Hoyrius that speaks about this unique carbon that has to be brought at times by the Sanhedrin for when they give a erroneous ruling concerning something which really is asur mebezid with kares, which means that if a person would do it b'shoigig, they would be chayiv achatos kavua. If they wrongfully come to a conclusion and they say that something that may not be done, they paskin may be done, could be done. And after they gave that psak din, as we'll clearly learn inside these parakim, the people, the majority of the Yidden that live in Eretz Yisrael actually did based on their mistake, based on the mistake of the Sanhedrin. So normally the rule is, if I did something b'shoigig, I have to bring a carbon. But since I did it based on their psak, when the majority of the Jewish people actually did that, we'll see the obligation of the carbon falls on the Sanhedrin, and the carbon that they bring, really we'll see, it's a carbon for every tribe, is called Par Helem Davar Shel Tzibur. On top of that, if the erroneous mistake was about idol worship, so then they bring 2 karbanos, and they will be called Seirei Avodah Zara. And we're going to learn, beginning with Perikut Beis, the basic qualifications or limitations. Exactly when do we say this? And in many cases where we won't say it, and we'll say the normal rule that the one who made the mistake, that will be the person who will be chayav chatos. Perikut Beis has 2 halachas, beginning with halacha aleph. Kol davar shechayaven al shkegosei chatos kavua. Any action for which if one does it b'shoigig, they bring a chatos kavua. Im shagagu based on hagadol. If the great Sanhedrin, not the minor Sanhedrin, but the Sanhedrin Gadol, made a mistake behoira'ah in their halachic ruling, and they paskin that it may be done. And after they gave the psak din b'shagagu ha'am behoira'asam, the people actually did what they thought could be done because the Beis Din, the Sanhedrin says it's okay. And when they did it, they did it relying on the psak of the Sanhedrin. And after the deed was done, Beis Din discovered that they gave a erroneous ruling. So then, the Beis Din has to be the ones. They are the ones that bring the carbon chatos al shtogas and bahirah for they're giving a erroneous ruling. Even if not a single member of the Sanhedrin actually sinned, nevertheless, they bring the carbon because based in klal, this unique type of carbon has nothing to do with whether they did the sin. Bein asu, bein loy asu. It's for it's for they're giving their halachic ruling. Now, Beis Din brings it, the sha'ar ha'am peturim min ha'karban, and no one else is obligated. Even though that the people were the ones that did it. You can argue, hold on, every shoygig is you didn't know. Here it's different because they did it relying on the Beis Din. The Beis Din's obligation to bring their carbon will actually exempt them from their individual carbon. Now, what type of carbon is brought? It's interesting that the Torah speaks about this mitzvah, this carbon 2 times, Parshas Vayikra and in Parshas Shalach and Chumash Bamidbar. And we're beginning now with the one from Shalach. If it was a mistake regarding idol worship, so then they actually bring 2 karbanos. They bring a par la'oila. and a sa'ir, a male he-goat, lachatos. Another detail, mikol, shevet v'shevet, for every tribe. In other words, they bring 12 parim, 12 oxen, and 12 he-goats. The karban zeh hu ha'amur b'pasha shlach l'cha, even though the Torah doesn't write explicitly that their mistake was regarding Avodah Zarah, but that the psukim in Shalach that are addressing a hoyra'ah from the basin that is wrong, it's concerning a ruling that something that may not be done because it is idol worship, they paskin is okay. And again, if no one sinned, they're not going to bring a carbon. Even if the minority of the Jewish people sinned, those individuals will bring the carbon. Interesting. Only when you hit the majority, as will be further defined. There's going to be a lot of basic qualifications in this chapter. Now, when it comes to all the other sinful behaviors for which one is chayiv a chatos kavua, shagagu v'hoiru, maybe call shevet v'shevet par hachatos. Then again, we're paskin in Kishitas Rebbe Yehuda, for those who remember, which is that you bring an animal for every tribe, but there's only one animal, and that's the pod. That's why it's generally referred to as the pod Helem Davar Shal Tzibur. So it's not one pod, which is Lachatos, but it's 12 podim. And V'zehu ha'amr b'Parshas Vayikra, that's what the pasuk is referring to in Parshas Vayikra, in Chumash Vayikra. The im call adas Yisrael yishgu, as you read inside those psukim. Says the Rambam in conclusion. Nemtzei Salamed sh'im shagagu based on agadol beirav avodah zarah meviyin kol hakol shnei maser parim oilois ushnei maser siiram chatois. Another detail regarding these karbanos, not only is it unique that it's being brought not by those who sinned, it's being brought by the great Sanhedrin. The hain, the surafos, they are burnt, meaning that the avodas hadam shchita is done outside, but their blood is sprinkled inside the sanctuary, as we learn on the paroiches and on the golden altar, and therefore that's the klal. Any korban whose bloods are offered inside, even though the emurim will be burnt on the outer altar, make no mistake, but the meat will not be eaten. It's going to be burnt outside Yerushalayim. And they are called, all of it is called Seirei Avodah Zarah. The B'Sha'ar Mitzvahs Shagagu. So then they bring the Sanhedrin Shneim Asar Param Chatois, like we mentioned, even though we refer to it as Par Helam David, it's really a par for every tribe, 12 parim. And they're also burned, same logic, Mepnei Shadamam Nichnas Lefnim. And B'chol Par Mehen, every individual par is referred to as Par Helam Davar Shal Tzibur. Shneim, it says, Ikrivu hakohol, and we say kol v'kol. In other words, it's brought on behalf of the kohol, but we can refer to every tribe as a standalone kohol. Kol shevet v'shevet kol kol. Shneimar, as it says, vayamid Yehoshaphat b'kahal Yehuda. In other words, they were only referring to the tribe of Yehuda. Nevertheless, they're called a kol. So when the Torah writes in Vayikra, the ikrivu hakol, we understand it must mean not one for the whole kohol, but one for every call, which means 12 parim. Further defining it. Bein she'asur kol Yisrael, shebe'eretz Yisrael, al pi beis din shoheiru. Now, by the way, just you see over here, and as we're going to learn this clearly in the next chapter, that for this, we, b'chlal, do not take into account the Yidden that are not living in the Holy Land. Because the word kahol, amazing, really is only referring to Jews that are living in Eretz Yisrael. So whether all of the people that live in Eretz Yisrael actually did it, bein she'asur roiv Yisrael, or even if it's a majority. Now, guys, the bottom line will be, it's very simple. Majority means majority in number. So let's say you have, let's say there's 18 million Jews, okay? So it will be 9 million and one Jew. Whether they represent the majority of the tribes, whether they represent the minority of the tribes, we'll see later, even if they are only from one tribe, the majority means the total number of the Yidden, majority of one. right? So let's say you have, if all of the members of 5 tribes, let's say, sinned, none of the members of the other 7 sinned, but the sum total of the 5 is more than the 7. Or another possibility, that if the majority of the tribe sinned, even if they sum total the minority, so it's either this or that, very good. Once you have the roiv, either or, then this rule is enacted, and then they have to bring the carbon for every tribe, even though some tribes b'chlal didn't sin. And similarly, by Rabbi Zajac, part of l'chol shevet. Wow. Now, either or. So we got it. So if 7 tribes sinned, so then all 12 have to bring, or the Sanhedrin brings it on behalf of all 12. That's the way it has to be worded. Even if it's only one. If that one is in number, the majority, again, let's say you have 18 million. If there's one tribe, that numbers 9,000,001, and all of them did it. And by Avodah Zajac, 12 and 12, 24. No, it's the parim by all the other sins is lachatos. If it's for Avodah Zajac, the par is la'olam, and the sa'id, or the 12 seirim are lachatos. And final halacha based in shenestapik lohem im shagagu b'hayra im leishagagu. They don't know whether they gave a erroneous ruling. They don't know. But they gave the ruling. As we mentioned, the majority of the Yidden that live in Eretz Yisrael actually did the deed. Now they're questioning, maybe the ruling was erroneous. So it says that Rambam einam chayavim v'asham talui. Like, what's the question? Maybe they should have to bring an asham talui. Just like when a yachid does something, and then they have a doubt whether they're chayiv chatos or not. So asham talui, maybe asham talui, we don't say so. Shenemar, because it says regarding the din of par helam davar shel tzibur, v'noida aha chatos. They know. In other words, achativada, they have to be certain, and only v'acharkach yischayvu b'karban k'moishi is what, as we'll learn. Right? Don't forget, guys, asham talui. Remember the key words comes on loy hoida. The Torah writes v'noida. There's only a obligation when it's v'noida. And the biggest chiddush is not that on top of people's obligations, Beis Din has to bring. That I get. What we're saying, no. When Beis Din brings it, everyone else is exempt. Now look at many qualifications, and they're going to be further unpackaged in the next 2 chapters. Is Kishahayu Hamoidim, Beis Din Hagadol, Shoshivim V'Yachad. Number 1, to make it clear, now we have Sanhedrin Ketana. We have many minor Sanhedrins. And even though they have to have a minimum of 23, but if you remember, and as we'll learn again in Hilchos Sanhedrin, sometimes you add to them. In other words, I don't care how many Dayanim were sitting in a minor Sanhedrin. It has to come from the Beis Din Hagadol. Number 2, the Sheyeh Roish Yeshiva Imoim Ba'ira, that the head of the Sanhedrin must have needed to be there while they gave this ruling. If they gave an erroneous ruling, but the Rosh Yeshiva was not participating in it, then again, the rule will be whoever sinned brings a chatos. All of them needed to be fit to render halachic rulings. Sometimes it's not ideal. You have to reach the number of 71. So yeah, you're bringing people that are not fit. Another qualification, the Yitu Kulan, either all of the Sanhedrin members made the mistake, or Ruban b'davar zeh shehoirabai. Weiter, no, it's interesting. In other words, there can be a time where only a minority made the mistake, but for whatever reason, the Rosh HaYeshiva decided to follow the minority of the scholars. Again, in all of these cases, then the rule will be the one who sinned, it's taka b'shoigig, will bring the chatos. The Sanhedrin only caused sin. They don't have to bring a chatos. They didn't do it on purpose, and they didn't sin. So you have to have all or the majority. Another rule, the yoiru b'feirush v'yoimru la'am mutarim atam lasos. This is very important. If you ever sit in a Beis Din which is like very interesting to do if you're able to. So what happens is that if you are able to, you can hear the Dayanim deliberating. And many people that can be there can hear how the Dayanim came to a conclusion that type of fat is not called chaylev. And when you are there witnessing it and you see that everyone came to that agreement, you know that they're going to say, they're going to paskin, this may be eaten. If you walked out of the Sanhedrin and you told your chevra, guys, the Sanhedrin, they are coming to that conclusion. And people trust you. And ultimately, the majority of the people ate that type of chaylev that won't be included in this din, because you did not hear them actually paskin that this is permissible. When it's not that the Rav have to hear it from the Sanhedrin, but they have to hear it from someone who heard it from the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin actually paskined mutarem atam lasois, and the person has to repeat those words, mutarem atam lasois. And then viyasu either kol hakol or rubai alpiyim, which means either the majority in number or the majority of the tribes. And another qualification, and guys, I know we're going through this quickly, but almost everyone will be further unpackaged in the next chapters. The people who actually commit the sin should be mamish innocent, only doing it by relying on the Sanhedrin. And they have to know when they're doing it based on their knowledge that based on, of course, did not make a mistake. And that's very significant, and we'll leave that to the next chapters. Another din, that if the Sanhedrin, God forbid, tragedy, they paskin, let's say, guys, you don't have to keep Shabbos. Such a thing would never happen. But let's say if such a thing were to happen, and people are then Machal Shabbos, whoever was Machal Shabbos has to bring a carbon. They cannot uproot something, as we'll see, that even the Tzedukim know that this is the will of God. It's only if they know it's Shabbos. There's a certain detail of Shabbos that's not written beferish in the Torah that they paskin erroneously. That's something that God says don't. They said yes, you may. The Yoru Levatel makes us, but Ulakayim makes us. And Moshe Yakru Kol Aguf. And finally, when the Beis Din becomes aware, they have to know exactly what is it that they ruled erroneously, as we'll see again that Rambam is going to elaborate. In other words, just to speak this out, they give up psak din regarding chaylev and regarding dam. And the next day, they know we made a mistake regarding one of them. We don't remember which one. They will not be chayiv. When they're not chayiv, then the individual that did the sin, that person will be chayiv chatas kavur. Chol elu hame'oirayim. If all of the above conditions are met, only then who shahoyu Beis Din chayavim b'karban, and subsequently, whenever Beis Din brings the carbon, which is really the 12 parim or the 12 parim and the 12 seirim, then v'ha'ois al piyam, those who committed the sin will be completely exempt. Avol im chasar echad mikol elu hadarachim, if any one of the above qualifications will be lacking, then harei Beis Din puturim and carbon, Beis Din will be exempt, and then you fall back to the normal rule. Chol mi sheshagag v'asa ma'aser, that individual will be maybe chatas kavua al shadul masay. Givaldik. And now moving on, my friends, to Perek Yud Gimel. We're going to further elaborate. We're going to further explain, especially the qualifications, the limitations that we had in the previous halacha beis, which was the final halacha of chapter Yud beis. We're going to see again the fetish, this concept that ein karu kahol ella b'nei Eretz Yisrael. And now we're going to see something gavaldik. There's something that we say mitzvah l'shmaya l'divrei chachamim. However, when you know that the chachamim made a mistake, then there is no mitzvah to listen to them. Now, sometimes people erroneously apply mitzvah l'shmaya l'divrei chachamim even when they know that Beis Din made a mistake. And we're going to see about how that plays into the dinim that we are learning about, which is par herem davar shel tzibur. Perek Yud Gimel has 6 halachas, beginning with halacha Aleph, says the Rambam. Ketzad goes back again in halacha beis of the previous chapter that Rambam gave many limitations, many qualifications. So that if even one of the many details or qualifications that we had are lacking, Yipatru Beis Din, and automatically, if Beis Din doesn't bring the carbon on behalf of all, then every individual that's in, as is the normal rule, says that Rambam, not the Beis Din Hagadol, not the Beis Din Hagadol. If one, the Sanhedrin of a certain tribe, paskin to their tribe, lahem shechelev hakeva muter. They didn't paskin that all chelev of a behemoth may be eaten. No, that's the Isur Kodesh. That's the Fedish in the Torah. The Torah doesn't specify what chelev is asur and what is even called shuman. One of the fats of the animal that is prohibited is the fats of the stomach called the keva, and they only paskin regarding that. And then after they gave their erroneous ruling, everyone in that locality, everyone of that tribe ate that fat. The din is also based on Peturin and and that's even if that tribe numbers the majority of the Jewish people, right? As we mentioned in the previous chapter, just for example, if you have a high million Yidden, halavai 100-fold, but if you have, let's say, 18 million Jews, and Shevet Yehuda is numbered in a 9 million and one, and the Sanhedrin of Shevet Yehuda gave this psak, and every person ate that chelev, you won't apply this halacha. Why? Because it didn't come. The psak did not come from the Beis Din Hagadol. Im hoidu Beis Din Hagadol, but they paskin shadam halev, the blood of the heart is mutter. Again, you see that not that they paskin that dam may be consumed. That's something that even if they gave that psak din and people followed it, it won't be included in the halacha because they're oikere ikera davar shatzdukim maidim by reading the chumash. How many times does the Torah repeat? You can't have dam. But they spoke about dam halev. However, when they gave that psak din, that's the word, the head of the Sanhedrin. Now, just lahoin that the Rambam in Hilchos Sanhedrin speaks about the structure of the Sanhedrin. And the words that we normally use is the Nasi is the one that's on top, and the second in command is called the Av Beis Din. It's interesting that the Rambam, both in the previous chapter and in this chapter, is referring to this person, which let's call him the Nasi, as the Rosh Yeshiva. Or even if the psak came, the Rosh Yeshiva was sitting with them, but one member there was not worthy to be there. Why was he not worthy? So we're going to learn more details in Hilchos Sanhedrin, but the Rambam here gives a few examples. They're going, Shoya Gade, which cannot be a member of the Sanhedrin, or the person had a psul of yichus, he was a mamzer, or the person had a cruel streak. And halachically, what gives a person a cruelty streak? An elderly person that never had children. When a person has children, they learn to be compassionate. And other examples that we'll learn in Sanhedrin. So in other words, one member was not qualified. And even if this member's opinion would make no difference, because you have the 71 people, even if you would have opposed it or before it, without him, you would have come to the same decision. Doesn't matter. He did not belong there. Also, and that will be always the rule. Whenever Beis Din is spotted, now, the Rambam is going to stop and give you a bisel kama mitzvahs. Where does it come from? As it says, Ve'im kol adas Yisrael yishku. So this is actually kol adas, means not adas oisha shevet. Kol adas. And as we mentioned in the previous chapter, that Hashem, with his infinite wisdom, divided or spoke about this carbon twice. Once in where we would say it belongs, in Chumash Vayikra. The other one, got a mitten of Parsha Shalach. And over there, it's the same mistake, but regarding Avodah Zarah. It says in Parsha Shalach, Imei Einei Ha'edam. Einei Ha'edam means actually two things. For a Chacham to be called Einei Ha'edam, the eyes is only if he's Ra'oi to be on the Sanhedrin. And number two, that the Einei Ha'eda is also the source that it has to be the Rosh Yeshiva. Because the head is taka, the one that's called the eyes. And Ulahalin goes to Masei, V'shaftu Ha'eda, Ma Edo Hamura B'din Nefashis Kulam Roim Leira. Af Eidei Hamura B'Shkaga Kulam Leira. What's Kulam Roim Leira? We learned from the Einayim from Masay. And I just want to tell you that in the Gemara we also learned from the Einay Ha'eda. Einay refers to the one singular to the Rosh Yeshiva. He's the real Einayim Ha'eda, and he has to be. If one member of the Sanhedrin knows this is a mistake, and he tells his colleagues, Toyamatim, Eloma v'rabu olav hamatirim. He was, he was in the minority. And v'hitiru, it's amazing, was if you had one voice of dissent, not one voice of, I don't know. One voice is, this is wrong. Amazing. Then, Harei Beis Din Peturim. How great is that? This inspires a dayan to voice up, even though he knows that he's in the vast minority. Doesn't matter. The fact that there was at least one member that said, this is asur, it brings a schus to the whole Sanhedrin. Harei Beis Din Peturim. And automatically, Im kol adas Yisrael yishgu. Now here we are replying it ache yishgu kol hasanedrin. But this adas doesn't go on the all or rubai kekuloi of the Yidden, either in number or in tribes, but this refers to the Sanhedrin. Now yoda echad min hasanedrin oimiyut and shuto amatirin, but v'shasku. And you know what? It makes sense logically. Why? If you are one of 71 and you see everyone saying something, you know that your opinion won't be listened to anyway. So why waste your energy? You're quiet. That's worse. Since no one verbally went against within, so then Beis Din is responsible. Harei Beis Din chayv b'karbin and b'chol she'as al piyam is patur. Now let's go further. The elu sheshasku im asu al pi elu shahoidu. The ones that were quiet. In other words, they knew that this is an erroneous ruling, but then the Beis Din gave a ruling. Now, like we quoted in the intro, there was a chazal that people quote a lot, mitzvah l'shmoya l'divrei chachamim. Now, when Nashinuch says, and even if they tell you that right is left and left is right, listen to them, that's when you don't know that they're making a mistake. That's amazing. When you know they're making a mistake, then you're not allowed to listen to them. But people don't know that. So one guy was quiet. That means he felt they're making a mistake. He thought, well, you have to acquiesce. No, it's Chacham Paskin. He thought that mitzvah l'shmoya l'divrei chachamim is even when they're making a mistake. Harei elu chayavim. No. They have to bring their own carbon. In other words, when are the people exempt? When they did their action, they thought the action is permissible. These guys knew they're doing something that's asur. So why are they doing it? Because they erroneously thought mitzvah l'shmoya l'divrei chachamim.
This is one of the judges?
One of the judges. The people don't know. And we're going to make a more important of it. Even if people like us know, we're not qualified to know. In other words, we're Talmidim. It's a big difference. In other words, if we think from our studies that thing is asur. When the Dayan says mutter, we don't know he made a mistake. Once halavai, we reach a level that we're royal lahira, then our knowledge counts. Because if you know as a Dayan of the Sanhedrin that this is asur, then you know that they're saying something wrong. Other than that, the way a Yid thinks is okay. That's what I remembered from my Rabbeim. If the big Rav is saying otherwise, I'm wrong.
But if they outnumber him, you should still listen to them?
No. In other words, like this. First of all, two things. When you are part of a Beis Din, you have to voice your opinion. You have to voice you're going to save the Beis Din. And number two, when you know, because you are qualified to know, that they're making a mistake, mitzvah l'shmoya l'divrei chachamim is not when they make a mistake. Don't do it. See, it's a very big difference. We have a concept that sometimes when a b'di'evedika scenario is being discussed, like the Hadassim of Rav Huna, and a Rav Paskins that this is b'di'eved okay. So the Talmidim Dafka would use that. That's different. That's just us. Since he Paskins, it's okay, and it's taka okay, even though it's theoretically b'di'eved, we want to show that our Rebbe is right, that it's good. That's great. But if a person has a Rav who made a mistake and he paskin them, and you know because you're qualified that they made a mistake, you cannot do it. No, they're making a mistake. Not for this, not for sins.
So he would just do what, even though the majority ruled against him, he would do it.
He would not go ahead and go in public and declare otherwise. Sometimes you can go into being the rebel against. You're not rebelling. You don't do it. If there was a deliberation in the Sanhedrin, during their deliberation, they came to the conclusion, and I have seen this. In other words, you sit in the based in, there's a deliberation part, and you know what the psak is going to be. Either you're a member in training, or some people just sit and listen. It's geschmack. Until when they paskin, there's no such a thing. Even though they're going to paskin the way because they came to the conclusion. No, the conclusion is when they paskin, davas and mutter. But there's a formal declaration. You don't have patience to wait until that declaration, and you know they're going to say it. It's already out of this case. But yet lo'am, and someone heard the end of the deliberation. In other words, he knew that they're going to give the psak. Then it's not included in this. Then the doer, the sinner, brings the chatas. And the basin will be potter. Because the Rambam is pushing here, going back to the second halacha, which is the final halacha of Perek Yud Beis, and clarifying every single qualification. And va'asu miyut hakol al piyam. Miyut, either number or of tribes. No. Miyut has to be in both, because it has to be miyut of tribes and miyut a number. And and before you can hit the majority, based and discover they gave up a wrong psak, but that's it. Hare based and peturim. And ve'elu amiyut she'asu chayavim. Meaning, maybe chatasai halacha base. Now, b'hasanhedrin atzman she'asu b'hayrasan. If you to get to the din of roiv, to get to the roiv, you have to have, like we're giving our mashal, 9 million and one Jews. Let's say 80 million Jews. Without the members of the Sanhedrin, you had 8,000,99999. How did you get to the 9,000,001? Because you're counting also the guys of the Sanhedrin. They're not counted. You have to have a roiv aside of the members of the Sanhedrin. In other words, also roiv anshe eretz Yisrael al piyam, afa pisha elu ha'isam shevet echad, like we learned in the previous chapter. Roiv is either of number or of tribes. And if there's one shevet, let's say shevet Yehuda, has 9 million plus, so if only they did it, well, that ends up to the chain. It's either or it wasn't the majority. Let's say you have from the 12 tribes, you have 7 tribes. Each tribe has 10 Yidden place. So you had 70 Yidden that's in. But if that's Roiv Hashvatim, Vaita Roiv. But it has to be out besides of the Sanhedrin. Afa Pisha Imiotakol, based on Chayavim. And once you're Chayiv, like we learned in the previous chapter, Rambam Paskan's Keshitas Rabbi Yehuda, Chayiv Par, I'll call Shevet v'Shevet. They bring 12 parim. And by Avodah Zarah, 12 parim and 12 seirim. And v'ha'osim peturim. Ketzah, then again, like we said, that the din of Kol, Yidden that do not live in Eretz Yisrael are not called Kol. Ketzah, hoyu yoshvei Eretz Yisrael sheishmeis ela ve'echad. So the Rambam, okay, so I take back my example. I acquiesce the Rambam's example is more important. 600,001. Also interesting. Why doesn't the Rambam give 600,000? I'll tell you why. But the real number of Yidden is 600,000. This we know all Kabbalah, because really there's 600,000 sparks. Elamad, the Arizal says that every spark has further sparks. That's why there's many more. But 600,000 is not a good number for our dinim, because he wants to make a majority of even only one. 600,000 can be even. He's giving an odd number. If it's an odd number, it's going to be either Roiv or Miyut. And even if they are Kulam, B'nei Yehuda B'lvad, Afal that the sum total of all of the 7 tribes is only 100,000. Right? Which is a sixth of the number of Yidden. Doesn't matter. Either or. Are they based on Chayavim? And here the Rambam writes explicitly, "Ve'ein mashgichin al yoshei chutz la'aretz, she'ein karukol ela b'nei Eretz Yisrael." Now, another detail about the 12 Shvatim. Who are the 12 Shvatim? Sometimes Menashe and Ephraim are counted separately. And when we do that, Levi is not counted. Here, Levi is counted. So therefore, the Shevet Menashe and Ephraim, Einom Chashuvim Kishnei Shvatim Le'inin Zeh, Ela Shneim Shevet Echad Halacha Gimel. Now, Hoya Ha'osim Merubim B'Shas HaChet. But they now, when Beis Din discovered, so let's go back to the Rambam's numbers, okay? So you had 300,001. When they sinned, they were derived because when they did the sin, there were only 601,000 Yidden. When Beis Din discovered that we made a mistake, Kanai Nahara, another 10 Yidden were born, and that's it. Now they're in the minority. Or the opposite. They were in the minority during the sin, right? So you had 301,000 Yidden that followed that ruling, and they ate that type of chaylev. And at that time, there were 600 treis and 5. They were in the minority. Then a few Yidden passed away. And now when they discovered, so now they're merubin. So the halacha is that what counts is what were they while they sinned. Okay. And not when we discovered, and therefore we're going to be machayev either the Sanhedrin or the individual.
They had to actually sin.
They have to actually do it. They have to do it. Did such a thing ever happen? I don't think so.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's Gavaldik. It's straight up.
The whole concept of counting the Yidden, it's for sure.
Love it. Why is it Mashiach? Gavaldik. Halacha Dalek. No, there was senses the whole time. Theoretically, it can happen. He's speaking about a mistake that can go on for many generations. I don't know. Such a thing, Hashem will not allow to happen. We don't pass him from Ruach HaKodesh, but we always have big tzaddikim, and they would say, this is nish good. Rejudge. Halacha Dal. And that's the ikr. They cannot be oiker the whole thing. We got to get moving. Now listen, guys, halk up. And then the noidolahem shachatu. And v'chazru bahem. Okay. So Beis Din right away retracted and they notified everyone. So you never had the roiv with chaylev. Whether it was the next day or whether it was the next year. There was another shayla regarding Avodah Zarah, for example. And they paskin that that's not an idol. Right? Yoga is mutter. And another mute. If you're going to add up, it's other yidden. It means now if you add up this and that, now you have roiv that follow the same Sanhedrin for two different Piskei Dinim. Uchshi, it's start for Echlin. La'oiv dem yoroiv. The din is harei elo mitztarfin. Afa pi shohoisolahem yidia bentayim. Amazing. And therefore, the Yechidim don't bring. That's the key. If it was the same Sanhedrin. Now, guys, don't forget, we're not speaking about Sanhedrin Ketana. The same Sanhedrin means that over many years, like you have new members of the Sanhedrin. Now, what does it mean? They all have to be new members? I don't know. The Rambam doesn't write. Maybe it's a new Rosh Yeshiva. Maybe it's a new Nasi. Goes after the head. I don't know. However, you define that, the head, the majority, all. Again, it's only the Sanhedrin Gedolah. It's a new Sanhedrin Gedolah. Then, ein elu mitzvah from the elu. Beautiful. Halacha hey. Afilu hoyde shnei bati adinim adavar echad. Same thing. The members of one Sanhedrin passed away, and then the new members paskin regarding the same thing. For example, chaylev v'chaylev. Each Sanhedrin erroneously allowing a certain type of chaylev. Each Sanhedrin erroneously allowing a certain type of dam. Or we're going to further explain if people who did it were not making the mistake based on thinking that the Sanhedrin said a good psak, as we'll explain in a moment. So then how they based in Tuturim. In other words, if it's two batei dinim, we never combine them, even if it's regarding the same topic. And number two, this neckline. What does that mean? Ketzar. Rambam will explain. Again, the Torah, everyone knows you can't eat chaylev. The Torah says that. No one, if they would say you can eat chaylev, it's garnished. But the Torah doesn't specify which chaylev. And they paskin regarding the chaylev of the keva, which we know may not be eaten, that they say could be eaten. However, the yoda echad min hakol shato, someone knows shechaylev hakeva asur, like we mentioned, someone, as we'll see soon, the one who knows is a chacham. I don't think we're not qualified to that knowledge, even though we also know that someone who taka is a higia lohira, but he ate it. Why did he eat it? Not because he's a sinner. He made another mistake, like we mentioned, and many people that I know make this mistake. Mitzvah l'shmoy l'divrei chachamim. Not when you know that they're wrong. That you eat, that you apply the mitzvah l'shmoy based on even when you know they're making a mistake. Okay? And you know what? You need this guy to come to Roiv. You need this guy to come to Roiv. He doesn't bring it. Number one, he has to bring. And number two, the Einoi Mitztaref Labin Hashem Alpiyah. Let's go back to the Rambam's numbers. If you have 601,000 Jews, and the only time that you enact, that you awaken the Par Helam David is if you have 301 Yidden eating the Chaylev, if there was 300,000 and him. No, so then you didn't have 301. Now, this detail of him not relying on the Beis Din, but he only did it because he thought wrongfully that mitzvah l'shmoy l'derech hachamim is even when they're making a mistake, is b'shoyes ashiyad shetoch chacham. Which his knowledge is taka knowledge. Or, chacham means that he's a member of the Sanhedrin, or he could get permission to sit in the Sanhedrin. And it's important for us to understand that we're learning, but we're talmidim. In other words, even if for many, many years, it happens to me the whole time, you have something in your head, then you're corrected. That's the mind. You keep on learning. I know. Sometimes you heard it from your teacher. First of all, your teacher could have made a mistake. Our teachers, we're talking about, or maybe you forgot. No, someone who taka notes. Amoretz in this context means all of us. Hareza patur, because then he taka relied on the Sanhedrin. That's what we would do. Such a big Rav said that, even though we're not speaking about Sanhedrin, that's the way Fruma Yidden feel that way, because that's the way the Torah works. You have to accept the old and then you go further. You don't go, God forbid, backwards. And therefore, another example. You didn't know that they made a mistake. However, you were actually not going to eat the chaylev. They paskin that chaylev is okay. Okay? So I think it's okay. But I ordered shuman from the restaurant. And they put on my plate, someone else gave me chaylev, but when I ate it, I thought it's shuman. The shuman happened to be, and the guy that ate it didn't even know that it's chaylev. So why did he eat it? He didn't eat it because he was relying on the Sanhedrin, even though he would have relied on them. He ate it because he thought it's something else. He doesn't count as if you need him to come to the 301, he doesn't count. It's amazing how many qualifications. Now, another day. And so either it goes together. He has to bring his own carbon. If you need him to come to the Rav, you don't have him. Right? We say this in Kippur, which means
Basically, he has to agree with them.
Not to agree, he has to do it because he's relying on them. He's doing it because they said you can do it. They didn't say you have to do it, but he was going to do it.
He's doing it on his own.
He's doing it here because he thought it's Shuman. He thought it's Shuman. Then he doesn't count. Look at this. He acted on his own initiative. He ended up, he's like, he's learning. And he came to a rule, he came on his own. He didn't know what the Beis Din said. He understood that this couldn't be eaten. It means he doesn't even know what they pass him. Because he's not relying on them.
Won't be counted with them.
He's also not counted. Only call hatoila bebeis din. That's when he's spotter. And again, it's not the only qualification. She yasham kol adracham shamaninu. But the chol achayv mefnei atzmai. Or student, you're chayiv or you're not chayiv. Whenever you are chayiv, we need you to come to the roiv, you don't count. The enem it started whatever again. Final halach of this perek, halach above. Hoyru based on lahatar adavar asur bizadoin rachman al-islam. In other words, the Beis Din wanted people to transgress. Did that ever happen? I don't think it ever happened. No, it's what stayed pure by us, which is amazing, is the Sanhedrin. The Kahuna Gedolah got corrupted, but if God forbid, but they knew they're doing it dafka. But also I call al piyam b'shgaga. So you know what happens? That's the whole thing about Bisman Abayis, Karbonos generally come for shoygigs. So Beis Din peturim ipnei carbon because they're mezidin. How great is that? Why? Because people relied on them. No one knew that it's a corrupt Sanhedrin. So it's a normal din of a shoygig.
What if the basin is forced? Like,
I don't think it. Okay,
the Jews.
It's not shoygig. The point is not a shoygig. Well, it's not a zodim, but I don't think they would bring a carbon. They were not a shoygig. They didn't come to a ta'us in hoyra'ah. They didn't come to a mistake. Another detail. And the yodu hakol sheta'u. And people knew, guys. And people learned the Rambam. It's good to learn this. And they know that yes, mitzvah l'shmoya b'divrei chachamim, but not when you know they made a mistake. When you're qualified to know. So they didn't. So they knew, guys. They knew you're not allowed to do it. So they're also not a shogig. And they did it. So then, why? Because even when the Beis Din made a shogig in their hayra'ah, that in itself is not machayev the carbon. What's machayev their carbon? When the majority of the people who are relying on them, b'shoigeg, sin. That didn't happen over here. The majority of the people knew you can't rely on them. They did it because they were baltayveniks. So you don't have that din. Beis Din peturim sharei lo yasu hakol pnei rosan shiyitata. Cholois and peturim en hakarbon because they were mezidin. Shaharei yodu shato, and they also knew that you're not allowed to listen to the chachamim when you are qualified and you know that they're making a mistake. So the bottom line is that chatos is brought for a shoygig. If on both sides. Well, on this side, on the kol side, it wasn't a shoygig. The din that the Beis Din, the paskins betos is chayv chatas, even though they didn't sin, that's only if the people sinned because of their psak b'shoygig. If that didn't happen, they didn't do anything, so they are completely exempt. And the final chapter today, Perek Yud Daled, further qualifications. It's amazing how the Rebbe's 3 prakim, all 3 are all about. By the way, Masechta Soidias, I think, has Yud Gimel Dafim as a small Masechta. That's who it's a hard, big, loaded Masechta. But that all 3 today covers this topic. So we're continuing to learn the sugya of Par, Helem, Dover, Shel Tzibur. And just to speak out one thing in the intro, is a relatively short parakim, is that there's a huge difference between a mistake in Hoyra'ah versus a mistake in Metzias. It's good to remember that. You know, it's many times they come to a wrong conclusion, but not because they did not know the halach. They didn't know the right metzias. They used to say on big poiskim that they learned, all of the laws of treifas, which was something very important for Rabbanim to know. Certainly then, they didn't have hashgacha. People used to shech the chickens in their home, and they would come and they would bring up the chicken. I think it was Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz. He was very young the first time. A woman brings him a pupik, and there was a needle in the pupik. He never saw a pupik. He never saw a needle. You know the words, a koitz. He says, if this is the pupik and that's a needle, then it's a treifim. He didn't know. At least he owned up. He doesn't know the mitzias. Like we're going to see examples, Gavaldik. It looked like it was sunset. It looked like it's dark. It was very cloudy. So he says you can do malach. Then they discovered the sun didn't set yet. It was cloudy. That's not a toast bohida. It's whenever
the factors of the cases.
If they didn't know the reality and based on that lack of knowledge, they came to an erroneous psak din, then it's not included in this din. What will then be the halacha? Whoever did the sin is chayv chatas. No one did it. This is amazing. But this whole idea that I sin and they have to bring a carbon is an anomaly, and we really limited it a lot. Perek Yud Daled has 5 halachas. Halacha. Beis Din sheshagu v'hoyru la'akar guf migufei ha'torah. God forbid.
someone who eats, for example, challah and there's like a
No, just we have time. It's short prakum. Chalavakum machlokes in poiskim, whether it's also the rabbanon or whether the type of takana of chalavakum was like a fence which will avoid us from having chalav that's not kosher. And if that will be the case, like they gave you an Eitz HaToiva, then whenever you know that this is not, that there is no chalav of a treifa animal, then you can be allowed to eat it. That's a machlokes how we view it. Like, I'm not allowed to swim in a lake. I can go al pi halacha, you can go into a swimming pool if it has a rim around it. I cannot swim in a body of water that looks like a lake. Why? The Chachamim said, because I might build a raft. I don't have the material to build a raft, and I don't know how to build a raft. Doesn't matter. They said, don't do it. Once they gave a din, that's the rule. Even after the tam is not there, the Gezeda stands. That's the way we, and many others, not just we in Lubavitch, understand the Gezeda against Chalavakum. Even though the reason why they gave is because there might be a mixture of non-kosher milks. What happens if you are on a farm that there aren't non-kosher animals? It's not shayach, even though there are other issues. But let's say there would not be other issues. If it's a normal gezeda, then it's also midrabban. It's also midrabban. Other praiskim, this goes back hundreds of years, were of the opinion that this type of gezeda was only to prevent us from having today. They didn't aser cholavak. They said, don't do it because you might. So if you know, then you know. That's the question. How do you view it? So machlek is a place. Okay, Perik Yudalat halacha 5. I'm not saying that today you know without the mashgiach. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that they say that you can know. And if you can know, if it's not the type of gezeda like all the other gezedas, you have other gezedas like that. Sometimes they said something, but it's only like an Eitz HaToiva Kamash. Don't do this, you might end up doing that. Sometimes they said, no, you can't do it. Halacha Aleph. Based in Perik Yudalat halacha Aleph. Based in Sheshagagu v'hoiru la'akar guf migufi yatoyim. Their mistake was in an entire mitzvah. As you keep on, as we noticed that Rambam gave examples that you can eat the chalev of the keva, or you can have dam halev. Not that he said you can have chalev. The rule will be anything that's so explicit in the Torah that even the tzedukah are moidim, even if it's a detail that Rambam was going to hold. You know, if you remember in Masechta Shabbos, that what malach is written explicitly. So no one debates. What about carrying? So you have opinions, and the Rambam accepts it, that Al Yetzi Ishma Mekaymai is also why Al Yetzi Ishma Mekaymai, because of carrying. If we're going to learn that way by the month, if we're going to learn that pshat, then that's befedish. So even though it's a detail of Shabbos, but that's befedish. Anything that the Tzedukah Marmoidim that you can't do, if they made a mistake, it's not shaykh to this topic. Then whoever did it is chayiv chatos. For also kol ha'am al piyim, still based in Pturim, and v'chol echad the echad, then oisim chayiv chatos kavu. Because it says the nelam davar means not everything. Davar means a detail in this context. Halacha beis. La'olam ain't based in chayavan at sheyoyru levatel mixas, but they are keeping up mixas. B'dvarim she'einam mifurashim u'mevoyarim b'toyram. These will be the words. No, it has to be b'dvarim she'ein atzedukah moedim. Achar kach you based in chayavan b'karban. If you met all of the qualifications of what we learned in Perik Yud Beis and Perik Yud Gimel, v'hoisem al piyam p'turim ketzin, for example, shagagu v'hoiru shumut lishtach v'islavei zara. You see, by the way, bowing down to Avodah Zarah, I know is not all of Avodah Zarah. But you know what? You know what it says in the Ten Commandments? That's befedish. Even though it's a detail, but that's explicit. Or if they paskin that you are allowed to carry mirashus l'rashus, and I'm saying the Rambam is going to write that clearly, that the pasuk al yetzi ishma b'kaymai is because of can't carry. Or if they paskin shemuter lavoi al shemeres yoim keneged yoim, the Torah says v'safra long. You have to learn the sugi over there. No, they made a mistake in something that even the tzedukim knew you can't do. Aleilu, harei as if they said ain't Shabbos b'Torah. Even though they didn't paskin against the whole mitzvah, but the detail is written explicit. Or it's as if, even though they only spoke about the Shmeres Yom Keneged Yom, which we don't practice today, we're machmir. We practice it plus. Today a woman gets a tipas dam kachadol, she has to sit shivas nakiyim. And therefore the days in the Pturim and Akarvin And as we learned already, the third chazaka now it goes together. If Beis Din is patur, then you fall back on the regular principle that whoever did something, b'shoigig is chayv chatos. Here you see, however, the Torah there was speaking about you walking with something. What about if you throw something? Or if you pass an article, like the first Mishnah, Masechta Shabbos, right, the Balabayis and the Ani, we're speaking about one who did both the Akira and the Hanacha. Right, so the Balabayis took the bread and he put it in the hand of the Ani that was outside. That's okay. You can read the words Al Yetzi Ishma Mekayim, right? You cannot, there you're walking. But if you're staying in one domain and you're only passing it, they said mutter. Or Sha'akru, another Avos Malach, is not obviously not other than kindling a fire. Because the other malachas, other than that, are not written. Right? We learned it out. Malachas, the malachas HaMishkan. And they said it's not a malachas, so they didn't, there's only 38 malachas. Then Harei Elo Chayav. That is included in this din. The Beis Din is chayv, yeah. I want to say something else. When we said in the previous chapter that we're not qualified to paskin, but the Ramah is. It was when you learn inside the Ramah and he says something black and white, that means that you know. And
apart from this is we have to know Torah.
Of course, you have to know Torah. You have to say el because it's not forgotten. Okay, so we know that, but what does bowing down mean? Only when you extend your hands and your feet. If a person just kneels on the ground, mamash the way we are minig, it's a minig to do today, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. God forbid, I'm saying that's not called ishtachava, that's allowed. I mentioned always that the Goyim, they put all these water fountains over there in Rome in front of the statues. They do that for you to bow down to those statues. That's why it's there. That's ishtachava. And by Rabbi Zajac, it's important to remember, your kavanah means nothing. You are thirsty, you turn around and your backside faces Rabbi Zajac, and then you can bend down and you can drink. I'm saying. It's not even chashuv enough to be mavaz. It's nothing, but you can't bow down to it. Doesn't matter. Hashtachava doesn't only mean pishet the time meraglayim. Yeah, that's what Torah writes. Call you mezon. But what happens if a woman during her 11 days of zivus, if she saw the dam only at night? That detail is not written explicit. Then you don't even have to have a shemeres. It's a mistake, but that's the tzedukah also said that. So it's not so explicit. He can remove himself even when he's erect. No, he's not. That detail is not written in the Torah. So that's called, that is a parhelam davar shel tzibur, and the Sanhedrin will be chayiv if all of the other conditions were met. Only that type of dam, which is dam nefesh. But if you eat the dam that's gathered in the heart, mutter. Again, these are all devarim she'ein atzelukim meidim by. Chein kol kayotze b'to'uyois elu im hoyru bahem v'asoroi v'akol al piyam beis the meviim korban al shulrasan and v'chol ha'isen al piyam will be pturim. Halacha gimel hoyru beis din sheyotza hashabes. Here goes our examples of a to'us b'metzius. So they paskin. I don't know why you need this Sanhedrin, but there was a question: is Shabbos over? They didn't have watches. All the Yidden were in Aliyas Haregel. The Sanhedrin happened to be there, and they looked up and they saw dark, finsted, and they said, "Yeah." Why did they do that? Because it was Sheniskase Sachama, because the sun was covered with clouds, and they thought. So they made a mistake, but they made a mistake in the Metzias, not in the Din. The Din was Shashakachama, Vachakach Sarcha. Right? Like Dim Ben Gurion, that was the whole story. That such a thing can happen. Now, by the way, by Dim Ben Gurion, if I'm not mistaken, there was like a nest, right? The Gemara says, the Chazal say, there the sun Pasha didn't set. But the point is that these things can happen. Elotos. And therefore, v'chol she'asa malacha, that person will be chayiv. And Beis Din will be potter because they made a to'us b'mitzias and not b'chayra. But why did they paskin she can get married? We're speaking about not Edom that are Nemon for other areas in the Torah. We're speaking about Edom that are Nemonim for this topic, which is a much lower standard of Edus. And then amazing. That's not called Helam Davan. One mistake. They'll be chayav and chatas al shgagos and mechin chol chayitza b'hem. Halachadal. Based in shoyre b'shgag. And b'shachachu atzmai al chet shaharabay. They don't remember which psak was wrong. They don't even remember what they paskin. They remember that we had a deliberation yesterday about a certain chaylev. And we said this, no, it was wrong. But what chaylev? Well, I don't even remember what chaylev. How can that happen? It can happen. No, it's even in the case where when they gave their psak din, it was b'shoigeg. And 1 second, and people remind them, guys, people did it. So people are reminding them, no, you paskin regarding, now there's a very important thing just to say it by heart. When you forget something, like in our case, the Beis Din even forgot what chaylev were we deliberating. If after the people told the Beis Din, you told us about the chaylev of the keva, they remembered, that's called they remembered, that's fine. Speaking about a case, they don't, even after they were notified, they don't remember. They're relying on the people. In such a case, again, very important. If then they remembered, that Rambam is not speaking about that case. They pashut don't remember him to him. And then whenever they're potter, and not that they were informed. Kate said, for example,
all the judges have to remember, or just one?
I don't know, Kevin. I don't know. Huh? Okay, just to say, so Rabbi Zajac is saying, if I bring you, just to know that even today, Arav is not a lot of paskin if he's under any influence. So you had these whole, in the Yiddish cities, which Rav would not drink and put him, and then take turns, because you have to be chayiv inish from people, not I want God wants. Okay, that detail, and this topic lahem. 1 second. What was it? Were we paskening about chaylev or about a certain type of blood? And again, and when people told them, guys, people knew what they did. People have to know it was about chaylev. They pashut don't remember how they pturim. Maybe chatas want to add to this. They had a big fabrengen. I think that if a rav pasken under the influence, I think it's not called a hira. So it's might not included. It was taka shoygig. Halacha, final halacha, hey. Beis Din shohayru b'shgagam. And the noidolahem, they remembered the shgagasam. Now, in other words, they became aware, ben shevio kaparasan, whether they already brought a kapara. Again, Keshitas Rabbi Yehuda, as the Rambam paskins, 12 parim. And if it was, God forbid, about a detail of idol worship, 12 parim lo'oila and 12 se'iram lachatos, ben shaloi hiviu, they didn't yet bring their atonement to Sanhedrin, kol ha'oisa, k'fi ha'irasam, she pashta b'reivat tzibur ma'achar sheyodu. Wow. In other words, what happened is that someone did it, but the guy that did it didn't know that there was a retraction. The guy that didn't know that was a retraction was someone that could have known. What happens when they make a retraction? They make big notifications. We made a mistake. We'll see details. If you were in a location that you could have known prior to your sinning, and you did not inquire, listen to this, you would never think this. You have to bring an Asham Tali, which is a mamash wow. In other words, this concept, just like what did we learn a few chapters ago, what's Asham Tali? That there's something in front of me. What's really, I should have asked. At Chaylev, I didn't know. But you could have known. You could have known. Here we say the same concept. And the guys, we're learning something big right now. In other words, once there's a psak of the Beis Din, if it's something new, which is what we're talking about, the people should constantly ask, are they still standing with this? Something new. And v'loy sha'al, hareze commission estapik loy im chotem loy chotem. Wow. However, b'med dvarim amurim, v'mishu im Beis Din b'Medina. You're together with the Beis Din. You were able to ask. Aval mishu rabayra. You can't blame him. Someone heard the psakim and they went to a Medina Cheres. Guys, Medina Cheres doesn't mean they went outside Eretz Yisrael. They went to a different city. They're not there. They're not there to ask. And even more, says the Rambam, it's not only about geography. You're in Yerushalayim at HaKodesh, and you heard of Psak Din. You know what? They made a Psak Din, Chavtes. And it comes to Rosh Chodesh Kislev. No, Rosh Chodesh Kislev, you're going to celebrate in Yerushalayim. Comes a base Kislev, you're going back home. And you woke up early to go back home. You know, you are in the mode of how many people are before they go to the airport. Some people are guarded. Some people, they get anxious. No, if you are already rushing to go, even though you are next door to the Sanhedrin, you can't blame you. Amazing. Now, guys, don't forget, one thing is important. You're always spotted if there's Roiv HaKol. If such a thing ever happened, which could be it happened, that they made a mistake and people followed their mistake, if you never hit Roiv HaKol, every person has to bring a carbon chatos kavur. But whenever it was taka halachic Roiv HaKol, either a number or in Shvatim, then this amazing halacha, we conclude, Par Hel Davar Shel Tzibur, they bring 12 parim, and the sinner gets his or her atonement from the carbon that the Sanhedrin brings. Moed de Chavre, to be continued.